What do you think about Strand as a subclass? I feel like if I'm honest, it definitely hasn't gripped me as much. I'm sure I'm going to enjoy it, obviously playing it, and I'm going to, as I'm sure everyone will, definitely main the new subclasses and check them out. And I'm definitely looking forward to it, but it feels like it doesn't really have much of a kind of identity. It's just a bit kind of just like green kind of explosions and kind of these psychic waves. It doesn't obviously. It's kind of the nature of the subclass because it isn't based off one of the elements. It's not like fire, ice, electric. It's just a weird kind of energy. And I personally, I'm not sure if you agree. I kind of personally still would have preferred like a poison subclass simply because we already have obviously like Thorn and Osteostriga and the necrotic grips, and there's a lot of like poison is almost like the unofficial element in Destiny. And just kind of the rotting poison damage over time. I really enjoy that. Always enjoy those like exotics and that unofficial element. But Strand, yeah, it's going to have to win me over, but I'm sure it'll be good. But it just seems a bit of like a weird, not sure if you know what I mean. It's just like a weird element that doesn't really have its identity. But I'm sure it'll give us an identity when we actually get to try it out.
If you ask me, it's one of those things of I think we need to sit there and play it before we pass judgment.
Yeah, for sure.
The way that I look at it is it's a very Bungie element, if you get what I mean. They have those moments like where they release certain quirky exotics where they sit there and say, okay, we know we can take ridiculous mechanics and make them run with something. And I feel like Strand is that in a nutshell, Everything about Strand being about the connections between people and the threads that underlie the universe and the threads of fate that bind us all, and cutting people out of the universe by those threads and weaving those threads into sentient things that then serve you. There's a lot of interesting ideas here. And I feel as though if you take a look at all of those things in their entirety, it still does feel somewhat disconnected because, again, you can't connect it to an element. You're completely correct on that front. But I feel as though when we sit there and gain the subclass, as we go through and we learn more about the identity and the reason for Strand, I think that's going to really push us to a different place. I think that's the point at which we're going to sit and say, okay, the identity of Strand makes sense. But from here on the outside, it's very hard to do that,
I think most of the... Sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, I do think that a lot of it's going to rest on the whole movement side of things and the grapple. But
that's what I was about to say. Yeah, I think the main identity of it is the kind of movement, levitating. So obviously you can do the threadlings that suspend enemies in midair, and obviously the grapple. I think the grapple was probably the main point of it. So it's very movement based, kind of the levitating, floating, gravitational forces as opposed to the typical fire, ice, electric. But I think it'll be good. I think I feel like I've seen the Titans complain the most that it doesn't seem to. What do you think the kind of classes stack up? I feel like I've seen Titans complain the most about.
Yeah,
it just seems
Titans,
like another kind of smash,
another melee super. Yeah, that's for certain. I don't know about that, but I feel as though with Titans, there may be a legitimate complaint to make. It really depends on how much you can do the big attack where you've got a wave that shoots out and suspends dudes. Because that in itself is a bit of kit that might just completely change the entire subclass. What I would say is that there is a lot of unique stuff in there as far as like the core kit is concerned. Like, yeah, sure, there is the grapple, and for Titans there is big punch and melee, but there are all sorts of different things you can do. You can suspend individuals in animation, and that is essentially like freeze, but it's potentially got different interactions to it. You can then create tangles, which are thrown things that you can pick up after creating on the battle. It's very, what's that one exotic weapon from Season of Arrivals? You make the balls with it.
The Ruinous Effigy?
Ruinous Effigy, yeah. It's very Ruinous Effigy in that sense. And then, like you said, you got the Threadlings, which are entirely a new mechanic as far as the different kind of companion things that you've got going on. Like, Warlocks have always had Arc Souls and Void Souls and all that, but this is very different. Like, this is a moving entity on the battlefield. It doesn't sit on your shoulder and just add a passive damage buff. This thing goes after people. It's kind of scary. And then, of course, the fact that Warlocks can make them return to them and have this herd of them walking around afterwards. It's kind of a very different image that it evokes. And then, top all of that off with the idea that when you're when you're using this subclass as well, it's also got something which is almost completely new. It's only existed in the Psycho Hack thing, as far as I know, the origin trait from Witch Queen. You can use some of your attacks. I can't remember exactly what the subclass verb is, but essentially you weaken an enemy in the sense that you reduce the damage of their attacks, which is, I think, a really important part of some kit. You know, you do that in certain in-game activities, and that makes certain enemies much more manageable. Like when Witch Queen launched, we were all lamenting how powerful Scorn crossbows were, with the ability to one-hit you outside of every single resistance. Well, now you've got an answer to that, even if it is bugged. You know, you can physically reduce the amount of damage that you're doing by hitting them with one of these different abilities that does that. And I imagine that that's something that certain classes will be able to build into more effectively.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for the Titans. That's their problem. Hopefully they enjoy it. But I'll probably be playing as Hunter. Hunter at least looks really cool, kind of spinning the chain around, and like that looks, you know, like I'll definitely be having fun with that. But Titans, we'll see. We'll see how they get on with that. Titan's definitely my least played character. Hunter first, and then Warlock, and then Titan sometimes.
Whilst Titan definitely has a very lamentably Titan super, I think Hunters, for similar reasons, are getting a very Hunter-esque super. And I'm very, very happy about that, you know? Like, they're sitting there and looking at all of this stuff and thinking, this is not quite like anything we have before, but also it absolutely fits the class identity, you know?
Yeah. I'll tell you, I'm really looking forward to that legendary campaign. I think that was unanimously praised in Witch Queen as one of the best additions to Destiny. It really is. Just getting to experience it makes the campaign so much more of an actual part of the expansion, instead of just this couple missions and quests that you try and just speed through and you're just kind of trying to get to the main end game. Like the legendary campaign, pretty much having the having your power reduced and actually feeling the difficulty and getting rewarded handsomely for it, like getting automatically hitting the max level cap once you beat it and getting all gifted all the armor. It was done perfect. And they said like immediately after Witch Queen, like, yeah, we're pretty much like, we hear you, everyone likes it, we're going to do that again. So I'm really looking forward to the legendary campaign. It's how Destiny really should be played. Like when it's difficult, it's definitely frustrating. There are some annoying enemies in the in that Witch Queen campaign, but it just makes it so much more fun when there's actual stakes, and especially for players like us who are used to breezing through content and having all the top gear. It's nice to be humbled a little bit and feel the difficulty that the developers intend.
I think it's also I think it's the fact that it wasn't just difficult, right? Like, it was a challenge, but it was something that was gratifying when you played through it. Things in Destiny that for the longest time have felt superfluous felt useful in that kind of campaign context. To give you an idea, final mission of the Witch Queen campaign, I was running a full healing build with Lumina and all the little bits and pieces alongside it. And I actually felt like I was a useful member of the team, like I was needed. Normally, Lumina is either woefully outpaced by the difficulty of content, or it is just way overkill because nothing is dealing damage to you and you are over-damaging everything. And this was a sweet spot where things like that actually mattered. You know, this felt really good. Your build was a very impactful choice that you made, and even if you were just using individual bits and pieces that were quite strong, you were still doing some really fantastic damage with all of that, you know? You had a lot going on in that one legendary campaign. And frankly, you know, well done to them. This is, I think they were totally correct to double down on the campaign difficulty side of things.